I'm sure that everyone knows that Dragon Ball is a massively popular anime and manga series. Originally written by manga artist Akira Toriyama in late 1984, Dragon Ball started off as a small-scale martial arts comedy. It was somewhat popular in Japan, but it didn't truly blow up around the world until Dragon Ball Z was released in the West, airing on Toonami in the mid to late 90s. Since then, it's been a powerhouse not just in anime, but was also so transcendent that it broke records for TV animation as a whole. Dragon Ball Z was so immensely popular that it spawned toys, video games, and, of course, movies. The original Dragon Ball movies were always really weird to me. They were kind of mindless and shallow, but they still had some awesome moments. However, at the same time, they were also really bland and forgettable. They weren't even canon to anything Dragon Ball. However, they still had a cult following, even after Dragon Ball Z ended in the West in 2003. However, I won't talk about the older movies. I'm going to review the ones that pretty much reinvigorated this series after over a decade of being pretty much dormant. Reviewing the older ones would be too tiring, and I already don't really like them all that much anyways. These newer films are different since they were actually written by Akira Toriyama himself, while the older ones were just made in-house by Toei. I'm planning on stretching this video out to 2 parts, because there are 4 movies to cover for this. 2 actually revived the series and released back-to-back, and the other 2 were more so just branching off of the success of Dragon Ball Super. This isn't all just to increase my view flow, but honestly, reviewing all 4 would make this video way too long, and also I've already written, 11 pages of the script already? So, with that being said, we will start with Battle of Gods. In 2013 in Japan and 2014 in the West, Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods was a massive resurrection for this entire series. There were definitely video games and other products, but they didn't really revive the brand as much as they did remind you that it exists. This movie pretty much inspired the existence of Super due to its success, and that show adapted this art pretty faithfully, albeit pretty poorly too. This movie was well received for being a great return to form and a proper expansion of the greater Dragon Ball universe, along with boasting the still great characters and amazing fight scenes. So, does this movie work even after 2014? Yes, this movie still kicks ass. The plot is fairly simple, but that's fine considering that Dragon Ball hadn't really been on air in America or Japan for about 10 years. And it didn't really need one because Dragon Ball is known for not really having very complicated plots. With all that being said, I'm not delineating the plot because it would require going through Dragon Ball lore, so I'll just talk about things in this movie that I do and don't like. Something that I really like is how well the story is paced for the most part. The story is basic and it flows well enough. It's a simple 3-act structure, yet it reintroduces characters from the series pretty well. It literally opens with the narrator briefly talking about the many trials and tribulations of Goku, but then it cuts to the main villain of the movie. And so we will have an awkward transition into the next part, I guess. We're gonna talk about Beerus. I actually like how Beerus fits into the Dragon Ball universe. It doesn't exactly feel assholed or overly convenient or anything. He just naturally is allowed to coexist with these characters in the world. It's also revealed that he sent Frieza to destroy the Saiyans' homeworld, which is a really fun touch, and it actually kind of allows him to be against the Saiyans for a good reason. He's also pretty menacing too, and I like that he isn't just the epic villain of this movie, and that he's also kinda lazy in spite of how intimidating he is. It allows for him to not just be some self-serious, all-powerful god character, and just be kind of a normal guy. And he doesn't really carry himself out as an antagonistic force towards other characters for the most part, unless they piss him off. But even though he is kind of lazy, I mean, he still kicks Super Saiyan God Goku's ass. Goku, as usual, is still a pretty flat character, and I actually kind of wrote a part of the script for this, where we'll talk about how he's actually not that bad, but honestly, I'd rather save that for a whole nother video entirely. He's not as annoying as he'd be in Super. That's all I have to say about him, in all honesty. Now, I don't really think that other characters besides maybe Vegeta have much of a big stake in the plot. I feel like they're just kind of there because they're the Dragon Ball extras, but they're at least pretty funny, so I'll give them a pass. I really like the story and characters of this movie, but there's one little thing that kind of has annoyed me for years. This is gonna be probably my hottest take, but honestly, and I mean this with full sincerity, Super Saiyan God Goku is not a good transformation in this entire series. narratively at least. I mean, yeah, the form looks cool, I guess, but the way it's unlocked is just through ceremony and not through any struggle. It's not even really done with training, which I guess it makes sense because I said it was completely impossible for that to happen. But I don't know, it just kind of feels like he didn't really earn it, or even just achieve it through sheer desperation like the other forms. And it just feels a little too convenient at first. But then it gets even more convenient. See, the whole ceremony thing would be fine if it didn't have to rely on the convenience on Gohan's wife Videl being pregnant.
You guys, Videl is pregnant. Growing in her is Gohan and Videl's quarter Saiyan child.
The problem with this is that technically the child isn't even born yet, so it's confusing as to how the ceremony that requires 5 fully formed Saiyans to work actually works, but I guess it just doesn't now. And by the way, that child is pretty much a quarter Saiyan. Goten, Trunks, and Gohan are halves. And then they just need a 6th person, I guess. And again, that 6th is a quarter Saiyan that isn't even born yet. I know there's been dumber, more inconsistent, or even just straight up laughable parts of Dragon Ball in itself, but I just feel like it was kind of lazy. Either way, it still bleeds into a fight that's really cool. The fights in this movie are really good, even if a little sparse. A big criticism from a lot of people was that this movie, quote, didn't have enough action and was too focused on story and comedy. I still think the fight scenes were really well done. The use of 2D animation is really good and really well drawn and well shaded and stuff. They even try new things like 3D, which, oh boy. Yeah, honestly, I know this is like the first time they tried doing it with this series, but real opinion here, the 3D absolutely fucking sucks. Like, I swear, sometimes it actually just looks like a Budokai model or some shit. And at worst, it just looks like pure nightmare fuel. But other than that, the fight scenes are fine and the CGI stuff is quick enough and at most lasts like 2 seconds. Overall, the animation is exactly what I'd expect a modern follow-up to just Dragon Ball Z would be in this era. The shading is well done, the characters are emotive and expressive, and I like the designs for the new characters. Apparently drawing Beerus was really hard because of his very unique and distinguished face shape. In that case, I actually applaud the fact that the animators were ever able to draw him so well for every frame for this 80-minute movie. My overall favorite thing about this movie is that Goku doesn't exactly win against Beerus. It really does establish that he's a god, and even though Goku gets more powerful from here, he still isn't gonna kill someone like Beerus. Overall, I think this movie was a short breath of fresh air that reminds people of why Dragon Ball was so cool. It's obviously not perfect, but considering when this came out, it did a really great job at making Dragon Ball not only relevant, but also just cool again. From here on out, it seemed pretty hopeful, but unfortunately the next movie forget why this one was so good. Battle of Gods was the reinvigoration of the Dragon Ball series, and with that came money from East and the West. Dragon Ball pretty much was reinstated as a cultural powerhouse across Japan, America, and pretty much worldwide. So of course a follow-up to this movie was in order, and then in that same year that it was released in the West, Dragon Ball Super would first air. In 2014 in Japan and 2015 in the West, Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F was released. While it did make money, and I do mean a lot of money for Japan standards, the response was just a little bit harsher than that last one. I feel like the flack for Resurrection F from critics being almost the complete opposite of the critiques of Battle of Gods is pretty funny to me. People complained about Battle of Gods for not having enough action. Then they complained about this one for having a bunch of pointless action scenes. They complained about the length of Battle of Gods being too short, but then complained that this movie is way too long. They complain about the side characters doing nothing in the last movie, but then complain about this movie spending too much time with them. The thing is, Resurrection F does indeed have these issues, but I feel like people who criticize Battle of Gods and then dunked on this movie were just kind of flip-flopping, a bit insatiable. Critics are weird. Now I know I'm gonna get hit with that these people are different from those people, yada yada, but sometimes the same people criticize things for different reasons. Anyways, let's first actually talk in depth about those flaws. The side characters kinda get pointless scenes of them fighting Frieza's forces. It only really exists to pad out the runtime of this movie, and doesn't really do anything other than allow this movie to be a little over an hour and a half. None of these guys even stand a chance against Frieza anyways, so why even bother with these scenes at all? The Frieza Force henchmen aren't used until a lot later, and yeah, we will talk about that one. We'll talk about that one scene. Don't you worry, we'll get to that. This movie's side characters don't really do much other than provide that action scene. After this, they're literally just on the sidelines. Also, speaking of fight scenes, in spite of this movie's really great animation with its biggest action scene with Goku and Frieza, it's just really drawn out and boring. I feel like this is just due to the fact that the movie just spends so much time wasting your time that it's just hard to get invested. Also, the fight's location is just too dull. Remember in the last movie when Goku and Beerus went from that party to the city, to a desert, to a cave, and then to space? It was awesome! Sadly, this fight here is just in a dull, grayish blue-skied arena with brown rocks and some water. There's no variety with the backdrops at all. And it doesn't even get the treatment of getting slowly more destroyed or anything. Damn it, even the video game can do that, but you have to actually make that happen. But yeah, that's a topic for another time. The movie from here on out just falls asleep at the wheel and just goes through the motions. And it honestly just feels like the writing staff just went to sleep here. Anyway, speaking of writing, this movie has Frieza come back to life, and now he wants revenge, so he trains to attain a new foe. Sure, why not? That's literally the plot. And that's fine, but Frieza's training happens even more slapdashly than the last movie with Super Saiyan God. We don't see Frieza train to get this ability, or even see him obtain it first. We only see it when he fights Goku. The movie would rather just waste your time with these other characters and these pointless fight scenes instead of just showing Frieza train. That's a bit underwhelming. At least with the Super Saiyan God ritual, we actually got to see the ritual. Also, I just fucking hate Golden Frieza. It's literally just like that 100% form in Dragon Ball Z, in terms of functionality, where he uses it and then starts to lose over time because it's very draining on his power. And the way it looks is just so unoriginal. At least the 100% form looked buffed. This one just looks like a shitty Sonic X recolor that you'd see in like 2010. You see guys, he's just normal Frieza, except he has a pissed color this time. He even keeps up with Goku because Goku is careless and lets him get in almost every blow. Also, Goku's new Super Saiyan form, narratively, is even worse than that last one in terms of unlocking. Remember how I said that at least we got to see the ritual for the original Super Saiyan God form? You might think that they actually talk about them getting new forms, but they're really talking about Ultra Instinct there. They're talking about Ultra Instinct because of the whole not thinking thing. And they're talking about that instead of, Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan. Ugh. You know what, honestly, thank God that they call it Super Saiyan Blue as the manga and anime went on, Jesus Christ. The worst part is that the transformation just happens off screen, and the movie just implies that he attained the form earlier, so instead of just seeing him obtain the form, just see him randomly transform in this action scene that I'm barely invested in. The overall fight just kind of had me half awake, until this one scene that caught my attention, and it's not in a very positive way. It was when Goku was downed by a singular laser beam. This fucking scene is seen as the poster child as for how Dragon Ball is incredibly inconsistent. Goku went up against a god in the last movie and made it out alive, yet he can't survive a fucking laser beam? I get that earlier we said that he was becoming overconfident, but this is not the way to show that at all. Shit, at least have Frieza do it by surprise or something. It's like for like 2 seconds they just nerfed Goku because they realized that he's basically a god now. And they do this just to increase the stakes. But no. Things get even worse from here on out. So Goku loses and Vegeta steps up with the same form and wants to kill Frieza. Sure, why not? Yeah, the form just like Goku's comes out of nowhere, but fuck it. I mean, he didn't even learn Super Saiyan God, so that's why it's just really confusing. But you know what? Fuck it, that's fine. Because honestly, Vegeta deserves this moment, since Frieza eliminated the Saiyan homeworld, which decreased his chances of becoming king of that world, and yada yada, who cares. So it seems like he's gonna kill Frieza, right? Yeah, about that, Frieza then destroys the planet, and Whis makes a ball so that he and the few who are on the sidelines can survive the destruction of the Earth. And this is done so that they can go back in time and kill Frieza. Oh yeah, by the way, Vegeta's just left to die, I guess. Which kind of makes sense because, you know, he was all the way over here, so who cares? But yes, he then goes back in time by about a few minutes, and then Goku steals Vegeta's kill on Frieza. What the hell? They literally try to give Vegeta proper closure with this, and then they realized that it was Dragon Ball and just made Goku win anyways. This movie played it so safe for no good reason. The last movie didn't do anything drastic like this because it was the first movie back, so they didn't need to do anything crazy. This movie had no excuse by the end, and truly nothing is learned. Everything just goes back to the way it was. No one really truly learned anything other than Goku being like, yeah, I was overconfident. Vegeta doesn't really have to learn anything, and no one scolds him for just stalling with his kill. Frieza's dead just like he was at the beginning, and he's back in hell now. And everyone else was just kind of there. No new alliances are really formed. The planet's just fine. Frieza's dead, yeah, but he already was, so it's like, who cares? The thing is, this movie wasn't bad. In fact, I think there's a lot of stuff to like about this movie. In spite of the fact that the side characters serve no purpose, I'd say that this movie is just as funny as that last movie. And of course, it still has the really good voice acting and really good animation. The problem was it just felt too comfortable and too safe and too boring. The animation was as good as always, but the last movie was really good in terms of visuals. But I will admit that there are some cool parts. However, the rest of the movie is kind of a letdown. This movie was incredibly disappointing, but it did help Dragon Ball get back on track, so it's fine, I guess. In spite of its flaws, I still respect the movie's existence in this franchise, and it's not even the worst thing from this entire series. I know it seems like I'm leaving the job half finished, but, well, next time we'll talk about those other two movies. Hopefully they can improve from here.